What's up, guys? I'm Laura from Reading in Bed, and this is going to be a little book prize chat. A lot of book prize stuff going on right now, and well, I'm not really following many very closely. Somehow I still have opinions. First, let's close the loop on Canada Reads, because that was the last video I did, and in that video I explained why I was not tuning in to Canada Reads at all, and I didn't. I didn't watch a moment of the show, and I not being on social media, didn't see a lot of the commentary going around. And I said in my last video that I knew it was going to come down to the Holocaust book versus the refugee crisis book, and indeed it did. Those were the last two books standing. And I don't think I said this, but I knew in my heart that the Holocaust book was going to win, and it did. It's not anything against the book. It could be a very good book, and as the Holocaust is sort of leaving living memory pretty soon, it's important to read those books, and I get that, but it was more just the fact that it was a foregone conclusion, and indeed it seems to have been. So the only thing I will say is that, of course, the only book that I was kind of rooting for in that contest was Brother by David Triandy. And between him getting kicked off Canada Reads and now, he has won the Wyndham Campbell Prize for Fiction, which is a prize sponsored by Yale University, I think. And it comes with a prize of $165,000 American dollars. So that's like $1 million Canadian dollars. So, I think Mr. Triandy is going to be just fine. Okay, so let's move on to the Women's Prize. And I gotta say, without Jennifer from insert literary pun here, torturing herself by reading through the long list and becoming increasingly exasperated, it's really not much fun. So I'm really not following it. I sort of glanced at the long list, and there's some good books on there. There's some kind of books I'm indifferent to on there, and then there's books like American Marriage, where I'm like, what is that doing on there? I read American Marriage and I liked it. I've recommended it to people, but I mean, it's commercial fiction. You can fight with me in the comments, but it just sort of doesn't hold up to a lot of the other titles on there, and I don't really understand why it's there. So the only sort of interesting thing about the Women's Prize this year is that Akwaeke Emeze is nominated for their book Freshwater, which I read and loved and would love to see win this prize. But they identify as non-binary. They use they and them pronouns. So, it does sort of raise that question of, how do we define a women's prize? Does it include, sort of a range of different genders? Is it sort of more of a not men prize? Like, how does that work? But there really isn't a lot of controversy around it. Emeze has said that their publisher asked them for permission before submitting the book to the prize, and they were fine with it. Very happy to be on the long list. And one of the judges of the Women's Prize wrote a very impassioned essay for The Guardian about why they feel strongly about including Emeze on this long list, and everyone's very gracious about it and all of that. It did sort of remind me of a similar situation here in Canada, where last year Joshua Whitehead, who you may have heard of because he was longlisted for the Giller last year, was nominated for a poetry award. And the category he was nominated under was for transgender poets, but he identifies as Two-Spirit, which is a very specific gender identity to Indigenous people. So he ended up withdrawing himself from that prize and wrote about the reasons why, etc. And like the thing with the Women's Prize, was very gracious about it. No one was mad. But it does, like, both of those to me raise the question about, when you're basing a literary prize on things like gender or sexuality or, any other socio-demographics, like, there are problems with that, right? We know that. But on the other hand, we know why those prizes exist and why they're still needed. So other than that, I'm not really paying very close attention to the Women's Prize, though. So let's move on to a couple of translated literature prizes, which are much more sort of near and dear to me. The first is the Man Booker International Prize. They just announced their shortlist, and I'm not really following it super closely this year, mostly because a lot of the books are from small presses, and that's not a bad thing. But being that they're small presses in Europe, I knew that the books would be difficult for me to get this year. So the ones that I do have or have read, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead. This is a beat up advanced copy. But like this was my favorite book of 2018, so of course that's what I'm rooting for. I also managed to find this one, Love in the New Millennium, at the library. It's very shiny. Haven't read it yet, but of course it didn't make the short list. I have bad luck with that. And I have A Mouthful of Birds, which is the short story collection, also on hold at the library. Also didn't make the short list, so yeah, you know. Of the shortlisted books, I've already read Drive Your Plow, obviously. The only one I'm interested in is The Pine Islands, and really I'm only interested in it because everyone's really mad about it. Well, not everyone. It's interesting because there's a group of bloggers that do a shadow Man Booker International jury, so that means that they read all the books, review them all, and they come up with their own shortlist and their own winner. And they really hate the Pine Islands. In particular, Tony's Reading List, who is one of my favorite book bloggers just in general. He really, really hated this book. He's mad. You know, he doesn't like that it's so cliched. It's another sort of middle-aged man, midlife crisis kind of story. He doesn't like the way Japanese culture was portrayed because part of this guy's midlife crisis is that he spontaneously moves to Japan, and so many more things. I'll link to that review. And do scroll down to the comments because someone, I think from the publisher, kind of jumps into the comments, which usually I frown upon. I made a whole video about that recently. But this guy did, he was very respectful and just, sort of addressed a few points, but, left it at that. And Tony, to his credit, was also very respectful, but stood his ground and was still like, I still think this book is garbage. And he read it in the original German, so it's not like a bad translation or anything that is affecting him. So, but yeah, a lot of these Man Booker shadow jurists, I guess, they're kind of not really happy with the long list in general, and this book in particular. On the other hand, when we look at BookTube, Eric, for example, really liked this book. And while I haven't seen the reviews, I think Eric mentioned that both Mel and Britta read it and liked it too. And presumably they read it in the original German as well, right? So now I'm like, well, what's the deal with this book? It is available as an ebook, so... but it's a full price ebook, which I don't really like to do. But if I do pick up one more from the shortlist, that'll probably be it. And I'll try to check out the long listers that I'm getting from the library too. Although it's always it's a bit of a letdown when you finally get a long listed book, but it's after the shortlist announcement. No one cares anymore if they don't make it. So, so the other Translated Book Award that just announced their long list is the Best Translated Book Award. And this is an American prize. It's a less prestigious prize. It only comes with $5,000, whereas the Man Booker International, I believe, is £50,000, which is I don't know what that is in dollars, but it's a lot more. But it does, the Best Translated Book Award prize did include some of those books that people wanted to see on the Man Booker International list. For example, Disoriental and Convenience Store Woman. And actually, Love in the New Millennium is on that long list as well. Comadre is on there, which is a book I read last year and loved. It's so weird. Olga Tokarczuk is on there as well, not for Drive Your Plow, but for Flights, because this would be based on American publication dates. So it's an interesting long list, and probably I'm thinking the people who were mad about the Man Booker International Prize long list might be happier with this long list. And just notable too, I guess, on both these long lists that Murakami got shut out. And the other one that I think people were talking a lot about was Tell Them of Battles, Kings and Elephants, which didn't get on either long list either. But anyway, with this Best Translated Book Award, I don't know a lot about it, so I was just kind of poking around the website, and I noticed they list the judges for this prize, and you see the usual suspects like academics and bookshop employees and publishing employees and stuff like that. But there was one judge who was just listed as reader. I was like, oh, okay. So I Googled him and was just looking for more information, and he's written a post, a very long, very detailed post about his process of deciding to judge this award. This is the second time he's done it, and the whole process of doing that, it's got screenshots of spreadsheets, it's got pictures of book stacks, it's got it really sort of tells you about how exhausting and crazy it is to do something like this and try and read and review this many books. So that was fascinating to me. It's sort of my not so secret dream, I guess, to judge a literary prize one day. I don't have secret dreams of, writing a book or, becoming a professional reviewer. Like, I've written a couple of reviews, that have been published places. So I guess I've done that. But really, what would be very special to me would be to actually judge a literary prize, like one that has money attached to it and all of that. I think it would just like bring together many of my interests in things like spreadsheets and reading and judging people. So anyways, I was really interested in how this guy got involved and what that's like for someone who's not sort of in the industry. So it's just sort of reawakened, I guess, that goal for me. And maybe I should like set my sights a little lower and try to do a shadow jury one day, because there's a few of them, not just the Man Booker International, but like there's one for the Giller Prize. Anyway, all these are things I'm thinking about. Am I going to follow this whole 19-book long list for the Best Translated Book Award? No. Honestly, I'm not. It's a bit much, although through this process, I discovered that I haven't read any books in translation this year. So I do need to like kind of kick myself into gear here a little bit. It's funny how when you don't purposefully try to read in a certain way, you just fall right back into old habits, because last year I was very purposefully reading a lot in translation. So I think with both the Man Booker International and the Best Translated Book Award, I'm going to follow them sort of, from afar, but I'm going to try and get a little bit into them, if nothing else, just to, get some translated books in, because a lot of my best reading experiences last year were with translated books. So anyway, tell me what book prizes you are following, you're excited for. Are you excited for the Man Booker long list? I don't know if that's next month or June. I'm hoping it'll bring Adam from Memento Mori out of the woodwork, if nothing else. So anyway, thanks for watching.